course, thank you for choosing to stay with us. So tonight, we are tracking the discussion about, the troubled valley of Kerio Valley, or rather the insecurity in the troubled regions of Kerio Valley. And to be precise, we're talking about the counties of Baringo, and of course, we have Samburu, we have the counties of Elgeyo Marakwet that has, for over time, witness insecurity, and this has some sort of raised some tension in those areas. And of course, this comes in line with the recent, or rather last year, the government sent a multi-agency security team, that is the operation between the Kenya Defense Forces and the Kenya Police, to actually try and end this insecurity madness in these troubled areas. But despite that, insecurity still remain high, and of course residents continue to struggle. Schools have been closed, some schools have been closed, and of course every day we hear about incidents of insecurity here and there. And of course we just want to take a look at the area of insecurity in these regions, and of course what can be done different to make sure that Kenyans live in peace and actually enjoy the peace and, of course, the sovereignty that comes with, the constitution that guarantees freedom of protection against all sort of threat. Remember, every life is sacred, and as in this, it is the responsibility of the government to make sure that its citizens are protected and are safe. And to help us, of course, navigate through this discussion, of course, is my guest tonight will be joining us via Zoom. That is Enock Alumasi Makanga. He is the Vice President of International Police Association and the National Chairman, Protective and Safety Association of Kenya. Well, Mr. Makanga, thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
All right. Well, Mr. Makanga, this discussion is rather a troubled one. It's a discussion that, if you ask me, we shouldn't be talking about insecurity, especially in this, the troubled valley of, areas of Kerio Valley. And of course, over the recent time, we have witnessed the incidents of insecurity rising over and over again. Well, despite this, there has been numerous, attempts to actually curtail the insecurity in this region. But despite the effort, we are still, witnessing the rising number of insecurity. And this begs the question, like, why is insecurity still a thorn in the flesh of this, these counties, in particular the counties of Kerio Valley? Why do we really struggle with the insecurity in these areas, despite the efforts put in place by the government to end insecurity?
Thank you very much for asking me to discuss this issue. My name is Enock Makanga.
All right.
I have 33 years experience in Africa, doing security, and as earlier stated, I'm the Vice President of the International Police Association, an association that brings police officers, both retired and serving, but in the whole world. So I'm the number 2 in Kenya, and apart from that, I'm the national chairman of private security companies, around 300 in the country. So I understand this area of security very well, because I've been doing this stuff for the last 3 years, and I've also gone to school about it. So going straight away, or diving into what you asked me, the problem of insecurity in Kerio Valley remains a thorn in the flesh. And I discussed this, or I have discussed this in various media houses, and I've told the media houses that this problem needs to be approached very carefully. You approach it in a military manner, you approach it using force, it won't work out. And that's why, as you've seen, police have tried to use what they can be able to use, and the problem pretends as if it's ending, and then it explodes again. So what does that tell you? 3 things come into play. Number one, these guys are really suffering. If you've never gone those places when we are talking about Kerio Valley, there are places you go there, my friend, you will not believe whether you are in Kenya. You will ask yourself a question: am I in Kenya or I'm in another country? So that tells you the devolution has not been able to work well in those areas. They have a problem of water, they have a problem of infrastructure, they have a problem of medication. Children who have never known the purpose why they go to school. If you ask a child when you grow up, what would you like to do? He will tell you, I'd like to own an AK-47. Now that tells you this child has grown into problems, and he does not even see the purpose why he goes to school. So with that level of understanding, that requires you to approach this type of area with a lot of care. Number one, you must apply diplomacy. What I mean with diplomacy is you need to go on the ground, talk to people, and then you find out how you are able to solve those problems that the people have on the ground before you apply force. Number one. Secondly, these guys are fighting for resources. Now, if they are fighting for resources, the only way they will stop fighting for resources about cows, about grazing areas, I mean, we need to empower these people. The government needs to empower these people by making sure that the army goes there, they take boreholes, they make schools so that these guys come out of where they are right now. You can blame them, but technically the problem in Kerio Valley cannot be sorted out unless these people are taken through a sort of a phase where they are taught and clearly explained that where you are, you can be able to move to another level. And then finally, with the issue of politicians play a very critical role, because when you attack a community and then the leader says, my community has been attacked, you will find a way of getting guns to be able to retaliate. And that's what has been happening in West Pokot, that's what has been happening in Baringo, that's what has been happening in Samburu. Because their leaders are like, well, my community has been attacked, I cannot be able to sit down when I'm seeing my people are being killed. I have to find a way of how I'll be able to say.
All right, Mr. Makanga will talk about, the role of leaders in all this, the insecurity, and actually how they can either, influence or even help to end this. But you mentioned a very important point about, going to the deep root of this particular problem, and actually, if indeed we were to solve this, then we'll have to change our tactics. Well, insecurity nowadays, in the past we used to see like, these bandits actually kill from, let's say livestock and even the grazing land that you were talking about, the terrain that they feel like if they occupy, maybe they will be able to, feed their livestock and even acquire or even extend their farming land. However, nowadays, in the recent days, we have seen like, careless killings. Recently, a head teacher was shot dead. Then we witnessed a member of county assembly being, murdered bluntly and in a broad daylight. Well, this is some sort of change in tack. And when you look at this, the way things are happening, this is, barbaric act, and it's no longer about the issue of now cattle rustling. Now, this is something that is really changing. So, what will you attribute to this, change of tack?
I think these guys are changing their tactics. I cannot say they are really changing, but there's a question of they just want to revenge. I've been able to go to those areas personally, and these guys are living under very tough positions. Even the teachers who are there, I sympathize with them. The government officials who are there, I sympathize with them. And one of the problems that is in these areas is you're looking at a very large area, and then a JSU camp is put in an area that is covering a very big area, where in case there's anything, even the officers on the ground are really handicapped. You'll find officers are using an old land cruiser that cannot be able to move from one area to another. And then in Nairobi, we've got choppers that are in Wilson, that we normally see them being displayed, that the government is able to respond to these things. All these things are just revolving on one problem. You cannot help me, then you can't help me, I have to retaliate. So these guys have a problem that revolves on hatred that has been there over and over again. When I met some of the leaders there, they were telling me, unless we have a generational change that can be able to be taken through, we've forgotten about those areas where times where we could kill each other, we could do what things have changed. Can we talk like brothers? So these guys are still living in what we call, in fact, the answer I could give is they are living in Vasco da Gama, Vasco da Gama generation, where they still believe in the whole tactics of, I have to steal cows to be able to enable me marry. I cannot marry because I can't give out cows because these girls have to steal. When I steal, I become a hero.
All right. Well, let me, sorry for interrupting you on this one. Well, you talk about generational change, and of course, this is something, a culture that, once you're born, it's like you are being baptized into this particular culture. So, for instance, let's say, for example, you're born and the only language and the religion that you know is gun and, of course, cattle rustling. Well, to change this, mindset, and actually, try to evoke some sort of change that, you're talking about. Well, is this really, mission impossible? Because it has been talked about, and we are not seeing some sort of any change. So how do you change perception and a mindset that is, predominantly fixed in this some sort of culture?
Possible. There's nothing that's not possible to a human being. What is required is just the leaders taking up the mantle of helping their communities to be able to change. And you can only change this when it comes from the school perspective, where children are taken through that culture at PP1 as they are moving on like that, By the time they are in secondary school, that culture is none of their business. But as we are speaking right now, because I can tell you for free, I was one of the people that were involved in transforming Karamoja in Uganda. And that was from 2010, roughly up to around 2015. And I was working for the first family in Uganda, and we were among the guys who were asked to talk to find out a strategy of where the Karamoja in Uganda could live that traditional way of fighting, like what is happening in Samburu and Baringo. And it worked out very well. We employed that method. These guys were told, bring the guns, they brought the guns. And the question they were asking, now, if I leave my gun, am I safe? Am I going to get an attack from the Kenyan side? Or am I going to be a problem? So this worked out very well. And I'm talking from experience that it can work. What only requires to be done is leaders getting involved, the government getting involved. How does the government get involved? The government has got a very good machinery where they can reach on the ground. It goes to the regional commander, divisional commander, down to the chief, and then it goes down to now the local areas, then the eldermen. But before you do that, you cannot tell me to change the way I live unless I'm fighting for resources, unless you give me water. I cannot change the way I live unless you tell me I'm safe. Therefore, if I don't have a gun, I'm safe. So these are the things that when I went there, they were saying, well, if these guys are coming to come and do what we call, they force us to leave our guns, we're going to bury them. We just bury them, then let them run around looking for the guns. Then when they leave, we get our guns, then we go back to the same problem. And that's what's happening in Kerio Valley. Right. When the operation is tight, they hide the guns. Okay. They bury them.
All right. Well, you talk about, the machineries and of course the intelligence and the information that government has at hand. Well, of course, with all this, the government, I honestly believe that has the ability and the capability of actually, ending this. Of course, you talked about, the collective effort from politicians, that is local leaders. You talked about the goodwill from the government and of course the security apparatus, and of course from insiders point of view, as an expert who was actually dedicated a bit of your life actually trying to understand what is really happening in areas or rather matters in security. And of course you have even highlighted the success factors and what you deal in. Well, now this begs the question now from insiders point of view, so who is sleeping on the job?
For example, like Professor Kibiki is not purely a security person. He's a lawyer and he was given the position of the Minister of Interior. So what normally happens is that he's supposed to pick security experts to surround him, to give him the right policy decision-making decisions. And I think that's now where the rubber meets the road, because we've got Kenyans who've been employed by the government to support the CS, and they're the ones who are supposed to help the CS and tell him this is wrong. Can we use this approach? Things that can be able to work on the ground. Now, if they are giving the CS wrong approach, then definitely the job of the CS is to give what we call policy decisions, and then from there, from policy decisions, it goes operational decisions. Now, operational decisions are taken by the National Police Service, the Inspector General of Police. So you will find that what is being done on the top or what is spoken on the top is different. When you go on the ground, it's different. What we normally say in Kiswahili, for ground vitu tofauti. And you will find when you get on the ground, you find the officers on the ground are suffering. Maybe they're not being supported. So when officers are not supported, even if you force, even if you do what, the truth is the job will not be done.
All right. And now let's talk about, the means that actually, fuel and propel, the attacks. I'm talking about the availability of firearms. When you look at the communities, of course, one will argue that, to hire a gun will be something that many people will not, think of, because first you will have to have some bit of resources. But the gun is in plenty and, of course, in wrong hands. And as a result of that, we are seeing like, careless killings, targeting community, against community. One revenge, the other one, of course, retaliate as a result. And of course, out of this, every day it is statistics. Well, to address the root cause of this, and of course, if we were to talk about ending banditry, of course, in these troubled areas, then we'll have to talk about the means and even the weapons that are being used. But the question is, who is sponsoring these weapons and why are they so, in plenty, in wrong hands, of course?
Okay, guns are available. I can tell you very openly that guns are available, and they are available simply because of what is happening in Southern Sudan. Guns can be able to cross the border through Southern, and you're able to buy a gun, 20,000, 10,000, and there are very many. I cannot lie to you. The guns are very many. They are very, very, very many. What matters is just where do you get it? And these guns are coming from the troubled countries. A country like Somalia had a government in place. They had police stations, they had army, but eventually these things broke down. Now, when these governments break down and the guns are left into other hands, they will end up coming in Kenya. And that's why you find boys are able to get guns and they are able to commit crimes like robbery. But when we talk about what is happening in Baringo, the truth is guns are able to come in from Southern Sudan, from Ethiopia, from Somalia. These guns are available. So the question is, what do we do? The government has to find a way of how these guns will be taken from the wrong hands.
All right. Well, and you've actually, raised a very important question. And of course, even as we wind this discussion, well, now we have a problem. We know this is actually bad news. And of course, every day it is a statistics. And as a country, we can't afford any life being lost as a result of, banditry. Now, this raises the question of what can we do and how can we end this, madness that continue to actually, being perpetrated, and it's something that can actually be stopped, because I honestly believe that, the government has the power, the resources to actually end this. So what can we do? And this is, I'm talking about an umbrella of approach from, the security experts, stakeholders like you. Then we have the community, the leaders, and of course the national government. So what can we do to end this insecurity madness?
Number one, we cannot, we normally say you cannot be using the same trick or the same formula and you want to expect to get the same result. You heard that saying, where you're told don't use the same formula you've been using last year, today, and you want to get the same better results. The security agencies must apply modern methods of actually pulling down this problem. One of them is using drones. Drones are very effective. Currently, drones are very effective. If we use drones in Kerio Valley, in Samburu, it will help us to be able to make these guys stop this nonsense. Number two, the vehicles that are used. We use old vehicles that cannot be able to manage the terrain of Samburu, West Pokot, and Baringo. So we must be able to get serious vehicles, armored vehicles that can be able to be used by police officers who are actually on the ground to be able to fight this problem.
Okay.
Then secondly, we must support the officers who are on the ground. When you take officers in the Baringo and you don't support them, just expect nothing to happen.
All right. Enock Alumasi Makanga, the Vice President of International Police Association and National Chairman, Protective and Safety Association of Kenya. Asante sana for making time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, sadly, that is where we have to leave it for now, and of course, because of time. And this has been a very, very important discussion in regard to insecurity. And of course, just like I said, every life matters regardless of the region where you are. It is the responsibility of every citizen, the government, security stakeholders, and of course even the local leaders to make sure that Kenyans are protected, because life itself is very precious.